All right, so the reason that I am making this video is to compare two affordable cameras that are in my kit, and that is the new Blackmagic Pyxis 6K and the Lumix S5IIX. Essentially, over the past few days, I've just been recording a bunch of different test footage of just a bunch of different raw scenes, nothing too fancy setup, all using natural light, and I wanted to see how best these cameras match and kind of just compare to each other if I have to use them as an A cam or B cam to one another, and then just hopefully be able to get the best and closest looking matched image out of both. I guess what's really nice about both of these cameras being able to shoot B-raw is that when I jump into post, I have the ability to be able to just have files that have the same exact workflow. And again, I really think these are two cameras on the market that are extremely affordable and have so much flexibility in terms of what they can do, opposed to having to spend tens of thousands of dollars just to have a nice setup and really just be restricted to one camera. I did my best with the circumstances to shoot everything as similar as possible, and I'll put all the settings on the screen, but mostly I shot everything at the base ISO of each camera, the Blackmagic being 400 and the S5II being 640, and only bumping them up every now and then just to get a little more latitude with the dynamic range. I shot everything on my Leica R 35mm and 50mm, so in terms of lensing, everything was the same. The only thing that I ever put in front of the lens was my Freewell variable ND filter, and that may or may not had a little bit of a color shift on some of the images that you're gonna see. So what I'm looking for in terms of a raw image out of both of these cameras is something that looks very natural to what I saw while on the shoot. I wanna be able to take that raw image and then obviously color grade it how I need to, but for this example, I'm just using a simple Blackmagic to ARRI conversion LUT from Phantom LUTs. But other than that, things that matter to me are dynamic range, color science, and ISO performance. Do note that because of the Blackmagic RAW only being able to shoot RAW, I'm getting more noise out of that camera versus the Lumix, which has some type of noise reduction happening in that camera. Even though it's sending it to Blackmagic RAW, you're definitely just gonna see less noise. All right, so let's start off with the Pyxis, as I know that's something you guys want to see. That's what I want to see. It's what I want to know about. Something I did find interesting from this test is that I really like the image a bit underexposed. Like, I wouldn't say a full stop, maybe half a stop, maybe a little less than half a stop, like a third of a stop or something like that. But it just looks better. It looks moodier. Um, of course, with just digital sensors and images these days, you can bring up more, just information from the shadows when you're editing anything in post, whether that be photo or video. But an underexposed image from this camera, for me personally, my taste, versus a more correctly, I'm not going to say overexposed because don't overexpose on digital, versus a normal exposure, the way underexposed kind of just looks and renders, I just really like the way it looks. The saturation, the contrast, everything kind of feels right. And it honestly feels like it gives me the ability to not have to do as much in post. And the image is very close, again, just straight out of camera to what I want in the end. In terms of comparison to the Lumix, the Blackmagic doesn't have any, sharpening processing happening in camera. So it just looks softer off the base. Whereas with the Lumix, we're getting that sharpening, even though you can, reduce it. And even though you are shooting Blackmagic RAW, it doesn't completely eliminate the sharpening that's happening in that camera, and that's getting sent via the HDMI signal to the Blackmagic Video Assist. For me, coming from the Red Komodo, which has absolutely amazing dynamic range, and I really love their exposure system and how it works. And honestly, I wish all, cameras that can shoot RAW and everything just functioned like that. It's another story for another day. I really do enjoy just like the dynamic range and the latitude that you get with the Pyxis, and more so with Blackmagic RAW. I really, really like the highlight recovery feature that is built into DaVinci Resolve. I don't know how it works. It's too technical for me to really understand, but through whatever black magic is happening, that highlight recovery will really save you if you are struggling with a very dynamic scene to really just hold information in the shadows in the highlight. So having an option that's literally the click of a button, be able to bring information somehow that you thought was gone back, is absolutely amazing. And if you're wondering, it does work on the Lumix S5 II via HDMI into the Video Assist 12G. So when it comes to low light at this camera, I wanted to test the Pyxis closer to its native ISO. I believe I shot everything right here at 1000, and then I went and shot it at its second native ISO, which is 3200. 3200 is very noisy, but it's not unusable noisy. Once you put a LUT on it and add just the tiniest a bit amount of noise reduction, the image cleans up really well and is 100% usable. But it's pretty noticeable in my opinion. I think this last shot with the Pyxis that I want to talk about is this shot of me on the stage with LED lighting. Being in the situation I have, I've used all different types of cameras in this setting, and when you're recording videos, when you're doing things in post, and of course cameras have gotten better over time, there is just out of gamut color shifting that happens. And so Blackmagic has been building cameras that are mainly used in environments like this. So it is no surprise the accuracy in which these colors kind of reproduce, and then grading it and being able to not deal with out of gamut color clipping is really good in comparison to the Lumix. Both are amazing, both render really well, and I really had no issues matching both cameras, as you can see. So to shift over to B-Raw and the Lumix S5IIX, you do need to note that grading, you have to change the color space and the gamma to Blackmagic's color space and gamma. Otherwise, your images aren't really going to look the same. It's, an extra step, but it's not too much work. It's easy and very quick to do, so it's no problem at all. Like I said before, the Lumix is a mirrorless camera, and it has sharpening happening in the camera, whether or not you reduce it. So you have to take that into consideration. But I really like the way this image looks. It's pretty close, just depends on the situations that you are in. In one particular shot, this one of the trees, I do see in the blues of the sky a bit of a color shift, and I'm just gonna blame that one on the variable ND that I was using. I don't know if when I was swapping the lens onto the Lumix that I bumped it and turned the polarizer, and that made a color shift or something like that in the sky, which isn't good. It's not something you really want to see. You want your images to be as similar as possible. But in most of the other scenarios, out in the daylight when I was using the ND, the image looks fairly good, looks really good in my opinion. And if anything, there's just like some tint shifts that needed to happen in post. I think one thing that really surprised me about the Lumix and really just makes it hold its own against a Pyxis and using it as a B cam for that camera is this low light scene. I found the low light to be a little better because of the noise reduction processing that happens in the camera. I had it set to 0, but again, once you put the camera in B-RAW, I believe it kind of negates a lot of those settings. It doesn't set everything back to its standard, but you know, there's this own processing that's happening through the video assist. But I do like the cleaner image that I got out of the Lumix at both ISOs, but more so 4000, which is the second native ISO for the S5IIX. But that's kind of it, you guys. I hope this video was helpful. It was for me just to be able to see these two cameras side by side. I definitely think they are capable of being able to do that. Do note that when you're using the S5II and Lumix, if you're for whatever reason watching this, I know you guys have heard it a million times, but in the next model of this camera, we most definitely have to fix that delay in the HDMI. It's kind of unbearable to look at when you're kind of just running gunning on set. And if that's the case for me, you know, I'm likely to switch to a different camera system or just use my Pyxis so that I don't have to deal with an issue like that. Especially if you have somebody like a focus puller pulling focus, you can't be as accurate, and that's pretty critical in situations like that. But outside of that, I really love both of these cameras. I really think they're both capable of just producing great quality images. So that's all I have for you guys in this video. Hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this, and subscribe as I have a lot more content on the Pyxis 6K coming to the channel.